Hi, I'm Jeff. Welcome to HM Ranch. Now in this segment in the series Comfortable Off-Grid Living, we're going to discuss our water reservoir, how we're putting it in, and why we're doing it no matter we are. Now this is a lot of hand digging, but somebody has to do it. But as you can see over here, we do have a backhoe, so it's not as bad as it looks. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just shaping the sides, trying to get everything nice and smooth. So we're going to have it about 10 foot wide up at top, 5 foot deep, and 6 foot at the bottom here. Now we bought a 20 by 50 foot liner, just a regular pond liner that we're going to use for this, and we got it at a pretty reasonable price. But the reason we're making it long and narrow like this is so we can cover it. Now, as you can see over here, this was our old pond, and so we've drained it. It was just getting too many leaks. And the worst part about it, why we didn't just reinstall another liner in that, is because of evaporation. During the summer, through evaporation, you will lose thousands and thousands and thousands of gallons. And so this way, we're going to try to prevent that using a system or a setup just like this, long and narrow, that can be covered. And after I get this shaped the way I want it, I just got to keep chipping down here at this bottom. As soon as we get this done and get it nice and smooth, we have to put in our water lines before we can lay the liner. All right, now here we are. This is a few days later. We had some real cold, windy weather, and it kind of slowed me down. But I did get a lot done here, you can see. And I also got my water lines in, my discharge pipe. So here's your one here, and there's two more over here. Those need to be in before the liner goes in. So what I'm doing now is I'm just making sure I get this nice and formed. The more I take off of this without taking too much, the more water I'm going to be able to keep in here. So I'm just going to keep working at this, getting all the rocks out, trying to smooth everything up, keep it formed. And then when I come to the point where I'm thinking, you know, I'm not making any progress, I'm not improving anything, and at some points I'm making it worse, now that's the time that I need to lay the liner. Okay, so now we're ready to lay this liner now. I got this about as good as I'm going to get it. And so we're ready to lay this liner. Now the important thing that I got to remember here, that we have to remember, is that we have to roll this straight so we have the same overlap when we get clear to the end. If it's crooked, you're going to have a bunch of overlap on one side and none on the other side, which is going to be a problem. It doesn't have to be exact, but it does have to be pretty close. Now, come up here. Now the other thing we have to do before we get this liner on here is, you can see these plastic discs on each one of our water outlets. Now these help support that liner after it's on. So this will go behind it. I'm going to have another disc in front of it that screws onto it. But when we get to that, I'll explain why I'm doing it and how I do it. Okay, now I just cut in the first water line here. Now remember, I had one of these already on the back, and that's something that has to be done before this gets laid. And so this will go, I'm going to caulk all the way around this. See, generally you would use the bulkheads on this when they screw in, but being on an angle, it just doesn't work for this. So that's why I'm doing it this way. So I cut this nice and tight around here, so it had to stretch around so the liner had to stretch around the water line. And so that's a pretty good seal. But now I'm going to take the caulking, and this is 100% silicone, and I'm going to goop it all the way around around here where these, because I got to screw in these, screw to the back of the plate to tighten it. And so I'm going to make sure I put all those around these holes. I'm going to put the caulking on there before I do it, all the way around, caulk it real good so it doesn't leak. So now you can see I brought a mat down here to work on because I didn't want to put any holes in this liner. It's a good tough liner though. But now you can see that I got all these flanges put on the water lines, and I got them caulked really good. That's very important. So now we're going to concentrate on smoothing up the sides. And you notice we had boards on the sides here. Now those will come off. We left those on there so it wouldn't erode the sides as we were rolling this out. But those will come off and set up on top of this, and we will pin those down, and that's what we're going to show you next. Now, I know I told you on the last scene that I was going to show you how we pulled the boards up and on top of the liner and pinned them down. So it was the next day. Karen was gone, nobody to film me, but it was a nice day, so I went ahead and did it. So I'm just going to tell you what I did here. So each one of those boards, I drilled holes in it like this. You can see there's a bigger hole and then a little hole in between it, or in the middle of it. Now on every board there's 3 of these holes, one on each end and one in the middle, on all those boards all the way around, and they were pre-drilled before we laid that liner. And so again, we tried to get as many of the wrinkles out as we could. And you're always going to have some wrinkles. You're not going to get, especially as you come up on each end and in the corners, there's always going to be some wrinkles. Just try to get as many ironed out as you can. And at some point you're just going to have to say that's good enough, which is what we did. So I put the board on top of the liner, pulled them out, put them on top, and I pinned them down with a rebar. Now what I did is, you can see here, try to zero in on these holes again. You can see it's a bigger hole and then a smaller hole. And so what I did to pin these down into the dirt is I had some old chunks of rebar like this. And what I did is I welded a little fuzz there. I welded a washer on top of that. So with that, I'm sure a lot of you are thinking, oh, welding, and I don't want to do that. So this is just the way I did it. You don't have to weld it, but you know, welding, we're going to cover that in another segment. But anybody in a situation like this should have a welder. It's easy to get started, it's inexpensive, and it's easy to learn. So my advice is, anybody in a situation like this needs a welder. So anyway, but again, there's other ways you can do this, but this is the way I did it. So I welded that washer onto the top of each one of my pieces of rebar, and then while the board was laying down on top of the liner, so I pounded that in, and this fits down into this bigger hole, so it remains flush. So with those all pinned in, then I took the liner and brought it up over the top of that. So this completely protects, you can see the wood underneath there. So this isn't very good wood, but this protects it from the ground. You can't have this wood on the ground, it's just going to rot. So this protects this piece of wood from rotting, being enveloped in this liner. So then on top of that, now I put another board on top of that, and it is screwed down to the bottom. So what that does is, this gives me a nice base to screw down whatever top I'm going to put on. I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet, but this will give me something good and solid to screw that top down to. But now, before I put anything on here, I want to make sure, because you get a good wind, we get those dust devils all the time, that could suck up whatever's put on here for a top. So I want to make sure that those rebars are stuck in the ground really good, because they went in pretty easy, because this is all fill dirt on top right here. And this is something that I should have mentioned before. Now the reason that this is up high is so we can distribute this water through gravity. Now if you go over here and you can see the pond, this is the old pond, and you can see the elevation of that. And now you can see the elevation of this in comparison to that. So, and this is something I should have mentioned right at first, we are on the high side of our property. And this is something, in an off-grid situation, you don't want pumps that require gas or electricity or anything like that to distribute your water. This is where, again, where you want to use Mother Nature to do that. You know, Mother Nature's kind of iffy on wind or sun or something like that, but gravity's a constant. So this is good, and this is how we distribute our water. Now you can see, to fill this, we use these home-built wind pumps. Now I don't want to get into those too much, because that is covered in another segment. But so what they do is they go to, and they use air, compressed air, to lift the water out of the well. So what it does is it brings the water into this tank over here. You can see this black tank. This is for our house water. And then once that's full, it overflows into this. And that's what fills this up. We have 3 garden areas, and this is one outlet that will go to this garden area right here. we have other pipes that went from the pond that are distributed to the rest of it, and that I still have to hook up. It's just so frozen back there I can't dig to it yet. So, but that's the last one to hook up. So here I've got 2 valves, and this is just for convenience. So in the spring, summer, and fall, I want to be able to just reach down and turn this one on, because you're thinking, oh, this is just going to freeze right here. Well, it would freeze. But even though it freezes at night, doesn't mean the ground's froze down. And so I can use this during those seasons. But now when it comes to winter time, see, I got this other valve here, and I don't like it because I have to use this key. It's too far down. I have to use this key to open and close it. So it's kind of a pain in the butt. So this, like I say, this is just for convenience. And this one, this is just an overflow. So this will always have a hose to it, to where it will go out to the garden somewhere. So it's just one glance, I'll know if our little reservoir here is filled up. So you can see where I got this coming up here, and there's no valves on this because I don't want any obstructions. When that water level gets past that pipe right there, it's going to come through here and not overflow. One thing you do not want is this to overflow. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn this valve on. This will be the first water that has been drawn out of our new project. There it is. So with that wraps up this segment in the series Comfortable Off-Grid Living. Thanks for watching.